Josephine Baker, someone you should know. World-renowned performer, World War II spy, and actress are just a few of the titles used to describe Josephine Baker, one of the most successful African-American performers in French history. Frida Josephine McDonald was born on June 3, 1906 in St. Louis, Missouri. Her parents, both entertainers, performed throughout the segregated Midwest and would often bring her on stage during their shows. Unfortunately, their careers never took off. In order to help her family survive, Frida Josephine McDonald was forced to work odd jobs, cleaning houses and babysitting for wealthy white families, often being treated poorly. If she was unable to find work, she would often dance on the streets, collecting money from onlookers. By age 12, she had dropped out of school, and at age 13, began working as a waitress at a club. Eventually, her street dancing routine caught the attention of an African-American theater group, and she ran off and began to perform with the group. By 1919, she was touring the United States with the Jones family band, and the Dixie Steppers, and married a man named Willie Baker, taking her husband's last name and dropping her first name, becoming Josephine Baker. She kept his name the rest of her life despite the divorce years later. Baker danced in several vaudeville shows, which was a popular theater genre of the 20th century. She eventually moved to New York City and participated in the celebration of Black life and art, now known as the Harlem Renaissance. A few years later, her success took her to Paris. Baker became one of the most successful performers due to her distinct dancing style and unique costumes. Although her audiences were mostly white, Baker's performances followed African themes and style. In one of her most famous shows, Dante Savage, she danced across stage in a banana skirt. Baker was also multi-talented. Known for her dancing and singing, she sang professionally for the first time in 1930, and several years later, landed film roles as a singer. With the money she earned from her performances, she purchased an estate in the southwest of France. She named the estate Les Moulins and soon paid her family to move there from St. Louis. In 1936, she was enjoying France. Josephine Baker returned to the United States to perform in the Ziegfeld Follies. However, she was met with a general hostile racist reaction and quickly returned to France. When she returned to France, she married French industrialist Jean Léon and obtained citizenship. She and Léon were married for just 1 year. When World War II erupted, Josephine Baker worked for the Red Cross during the occupation of France. As a member of the Free French Forces, she also entertained troops in both Africa and the Middle East. Perhaps most importantly, however, Baker did work for the French resistance at times, smuggling messages hidden in her sheet music and even in her underwear. For these efforts at the war's end, Baker was awarded both the Croix de Guerre and the Legion of Honor, two of France's highest military honors. After the war, she spent much of her time at Les Moulins with her family. In 1947, she married French orchestra leader Joe Bullion. And beginning in 1950, she began to adopt babies from all around the world. She adopted 12 children in all, creating what she referred to as her rainbow tribe. She returned home forced to confront segregation and discrimination that she had not experienced since she was a child in St. Louis. She often refused to perform to segregated audiences, which usually forced club owners to integrate for her shows. During the 1950s, Baker frequently returned to the United States to lend her support to the civil rights movement, participating in demonstrations and boycotting segregated clubs and concert venues. In 1936, Baker participated alongside Martin Luther King Jr. in the March on Washington, and was among many notable speakers that day. In their efforts, the NAACP eventually named May 20th Josephine Baker Day. She continued to fight racial injustices into the 1970s and remained on stage later in her life. In 1975, she performed for the last time to a sold-out audience and received a standing ovation at the end of the show. Days later, Josephine died of cerebral hemorrhage on April 12, 1975. She was 68. She was buried with military honors, and on the day of her funeral, more than 20,000 people lined the streets of Paris to witness the procession, and the French government honored her with a 21-gun salute, making Josephine Baker the first American woman in history to be buried in France with military honors.